Good morning and welcome. I am Megan Lancaster and I will be service coordinating today. Today's reflection, Not Both Sides Now, will be given by our minister, Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley. I welcome all of you today, and we, the congregation, welcome most particularly those of you who may be visiting us today. If you are new to North Chapel, consider signing the guest book at the back of the sanctuary. There are also hearing assistant devices and large print hymnals that can be found in the back. So we actually have a couple different announcements today. A reminder that Discord in Concord, a one-act play, which will last about half an hour, will be happening after coffee hour. There is a longer, more detailed description in your order of service, so give that a look. It should be a very interesting event. A couple other announcements.
This is for the food shelf. Soup! I want to thank everybody. I hadn't checked the box in the front lobby very recently, but I looked today and it's absolutely brimming with food, lentils, and all kinds of good, healthy food. So I want to thank you for that, and I want to encourage you to keep it up. I'm going to empty the box today, so it will be ready, and I'll take the stuff to the food shelf. It will be ready for the next phase. Along that line, I wanted to share something about food safety that my daughter was involved in. She lives in Seward, Alaska, and a friend of hers, who she said always is into something, did an event where they raised money for food and water supplies to be given to Gaza. And they, she said, you really don't want to collect food for Gaza or supplies because it never gets to them. The best way to do is to collect money, she said. So her friend got all of her artist friends, and my daughter is an artist, to make linotype prints and have an event where they would be sold. And my daughter Liza made some beautiful ones. This one, these are zines, and if you don't know what zines are, they're small magazines that you print that are very limited in printing. I think she made 10 of each. And they were sold at the event. She sent me some. So this one is called Food. They're printed onto paper bags. And this is flour, Goya beans, penne, Amazola corn oil, split peas, lentils. Then she made one for water. I don't need to show you all the pictures. Each page has water bottles in it. It says safe drinking water on the back. And then the last one she made was for sanitation, and it has a toilet on there. And she said the toilets weren't a zine, they were standalone prints, but all of her toilets sold, and most of her zines sold. And her friend made $4,000 of money to send to Gaza for food and water. So maybe whatever they need. But I thought that was really a cool idea. Wanted to share it with you. And I want to again thank you for supporting the food shelf by bringing your food, non-perishables here. Thank you.
Good morning, Mary Blanton. So a reminder that the bulb sale is ongoing. I printed out some more order forms that are now at the back of the church. And if you want to make it part of a group order so you don't have to pay the shipping, you can just email me what you want, or you can fill out a form and put it under the door in Joanne's office. And then another announcement that feels crazy, right? We're ordering spring bulbs now, and that makes sense because we're going to plant them. But the wreath sale starts tomorrow. As if any of us want to think about Christmas now. But we have to have the preliminary order in the 30th of September and the final order in by the 15th of October. So next week I will have order forms at the church, and we'll put things on the listserv. And if anybody would like to help soliciting people to see who wants to buy wreaths in our community, I would love to have some help. So please see me at coffee hour after church. Thanks.
So whenever I am called to service coordinate, I actually on my computer have the past outlines, lots of stuff that I've done. So I take the last one and I make a copy and I make changes. So I see what I did whenever the last time was, and normally I was planning to write or find some sort of opening words, but when I opened last time's outline, template, whatever you want to call it, and read the opening words that were there, they really quite struck me as all the more relevant now, 4-ish months later. It was April, I think. And so I decided, with a few words of my own and a little tinkering, that I was going to keep the same thing because it just felt right. So in April, I used The Holy Work of Showing Up by Ashley Horan as opening words, and she was largely talking about another minister, as you'll see. And so the reading went as follows. How is it with your soul? This is a question that John Wesley, Anglican priest and founder of Methodism, was known to ask. I ask you because we find ourselves in challenging and disturbing times. So, beloveds, how is it with your soul? Regardless of your response, I want you to think about taking time in your daily lives to pause, take a deep breath, say a prayer, sing a song, light a chalice, feel the force of gravity pulling us all together toward a center, the same center. Whatever helps you feel more rooted and less alone. Then do it again, and again, and again. And once you feel that rootedness and connection, hear this. You are beloved beyond belief. You are enough. You are precious. Your work and your life matter, and you are not alone. You are part of a we, a great cloud of witnesses, living and dead, who have insisted that this beautiful broken world of ours is a blessing worthy of both deep gratitude and fierce protection. Our ancestors and our descendants are beckoning us, compelling us onward toward greater connection, greater compassion, greater commitment to one another and to the earth. Together, we are resilient and resourceful, enough to say yes to that call, to make it our life's work in 1,000 different ways, knowing that we can do no other than bind ourselves more tightly together and throw ourselves into the holy work of showing up again and again, to be part of building that world of which we dream, but which we have not yet seen. To me, these words from John Wesley fit today, this moment, this era perfectly. I find some days a struggle as we watch the news and see the world around us. But then I remember that showing up with compassion, with a full heart, with a desire to do what I can is most important. What I can. Then I remember I do not have to have grand gestures or ideas that will solve all the problems. It is okay to simply show up and bear witness, if that is what I can do today. John Wesley's holy work of showing up is something we can each do, something we can do together. For it is also paramount to remember we are not alone. So today, in this moment, I invite you to look around, to see those who stand with you and for you, to show up for them and with them as we strive to face the day and move forward, doing what we can. Remember, we are beloved and we are not alone.
Dear Charlie Kirk, dear Charles James Kirk, your birthday is coming up soon. October 14th, the same as President Eisenhower and the designer Ralph Lauren and George Floyd, who was also senselessly murdered. I very much would have liked to have met you, to have spent time enough to begin to get to know one another. I wish that we could have talked for a while, non-combatively, to find the good way forward together. We could have done that. I wish that we could have found a way to meet out in the sunshine and make the world just a little bit more beautiful. Just you and me, though. Our efforts might not have made sense to other people. Because you and I are, not because you and I are special, but because of the level of intimacy that is required for growth. In my faith tradition, we embrace a well-known passage by Rumi. Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field, and I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in the grass and the world is too full to talk about, ideas, language, and even the phrase each other doesn't make sense. I would have liked to have found that field with you and with everyone else who was peaceful enough to get there. And I would have liked for you to have found that part of me that lives somewhere in you. And I would have liked to have found that part of you that lives somewhere in me. I'm truly sorry that this isn't going to happen. The world is a bit less beautiful without you in it, my friend. And my heart truly breaks about that. May your journey beyond us all be a blessing. Deepest peace to you and to your family. Amen. Good morning. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you of a song in our teal hymnal, Standing on the Side of Love. It's a lovely hymn, and we may sing it at some point. The words of the refrain are, standing on the side of love, hands joined together and hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim that we are standing on the side of love. It's beautiful, and some of us took issue with it. Some of us Unitarian types, saying that the song was ableist. They argued that because not all of us can actually physically stand, the words of the hymn are exclusive and should be changed. I don't know. We don't say this about ideas, and we don't say this about mountains. We often say that they stand, even though they don't have any legs at all. I get it, but I'm not always compelled by Unitarian Universalist arguments. Besides, there's a better one to be made. In holy measure, love doesn't have a side. It doesn't always have a side. In fact, it rarely has a side, even when it tries to claim one. Maybe in deepest measure, love doesn't have a side at all. Maybe that's why the field beyond the ideas of right-doing and wrongdoing is always there. I want us to go to that field sometime and play some ultimate frisbee. In any case, good morning. It's good to be together. For it is not true that the work of humanity is finished, but that all we need to do now is to keep step with the world. Ami Césaire. I think he's Trinidadian. So is that right? Do we need to always just go along? Can we not find a new way forward for ourselves, one that leads us out of the morass? Of course, we know now that there's another way of seeing things. We know now that it's important not simply to see from one's own point of view. We know that it's important to see both sides of things. At least I think we know that. We've been taught that this is important. We've been taught, very carefully taught, in fact. Surely by now we've learned our lesson. We know that it is important to see things from both sides. It seems natural, somehow, like the watercourse way of rivers that is chosen over time. Like the deepest stage of our humanity, the deepening stages of our humanity. Like the rightful unfolding of the Spirit. We know to broaden our perspective and to see things from both sides? No. To look at clouds from both sides? No. To look at love from both sides? To look at life from both sides now? To look at cultural conflicts from both sides? To look at political conflict? But how do we hold together when it feels like we're being torn apart? W.E.B. Du Bois addressed this subject in the beginning of the 20th century in 1903 in a book that he called The Souls of Black Folk. He wrote famously, "The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line." It was bold for 1903, even for Du Bois, as brilliant as he was, not because the discourse of American race relations was still in its infancy, although it was back then, but because the 20th century was in its infancy. Du Bois didn't say that the problem of the 20th century will be the problem of the color line. He said that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line, and that was bold for a writer in 1903, when the whole country had the remaining 97 years of the century to prove the writer wrong. Du Bois was prescient, though ahead of his time. He was taught early on how to see things from both sides through a hazy curtain that seemed to separate him and his people from other Americans, a curtain that isolated him and his people even from themselves. It was indeed a problem, and unfortunately an enduring one. For him, it was not a matter of time and the chosen course of rivers, nor was it a matter of maturity, nor a matter of the natural unfoldment of spirit. For Du Bois, it was a matter of survival. He wrote back then, "After the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and the Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with second sight in this American world, a world that yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world." Du Bois claimed that this second sight allowed the Negro to see two sides of things. "It is a peculiar sensation," he writes, "this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One forever feels this two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder." How are we supposed to do this? How are we supposed to hold ourselves together when it feels like we're being torn apart, especially when it comes to crises in Sudan, in Ukraine, and perhaps most visibly and most painfully in Gaza? Dr. Parker is my teacher. She's like 5'0" nothing, 110 pounds soaking wet. She's a little bitty thing now. She beat me up for saying that, just so you know. But I'd be right. Dr. Parker, my teacher in seminary, taught me that the fault line of the problems of the world runs through our very hearts. That the problems of our lives connect us to the whole wide world, and that we can experience this connection and survive it with grace and with gratitude if we tune ourselves and tune our awareness with God. If we truly commit ourselves to conquering all the violence entrenched in the recesses of our passion, and we can do this, we really can. I'm not trying to be naively optimistic. I believe as I do because I learned from Rebecca Parker. And she and I believe as we do because we learned from James Baldwin. It was James Baldwin who believed it first. He saw the real possibility of solving the problem of the 20th century. He saw the possibility with his own eyes, and he wrote, "If we, and by we I mean the relatively conscious blacks and the relatively conscious whites, who must, like lovers, insist on or even create the consciousness of others, If we do not falter in our task, it may be possible, handful that we are, to end the racial nightmare, to achieve our country, and to change the history of the world. Much is at stake if we falter, and much is at risk if we fail. So we climb in with all we've got. For this reason, I feel called to stand before you, more fully exposed and not behind the block of wood, so sacred as it is. I feel called to embody ministry these days. I want my body to be visible because I am grieving deeply for the state of this world. Because I am sensitive and bitter and reactive sometimes. Because I can't settle. Because I'm impatient and because I have so much of my heart invested in the idea of peace. So, as I told you last week, a friend of mine, Ethan Hooper, he died about 2 weeks ago from a heart attack in his mid-40s. It's not inaccurate to say that. There were other details that complicate the picture a little bit. There's another side of the story, but I'm not out of integrity to say that he died of a heart attack. And so we gathered about 50 strong at Star Island this last week to commemorate and to celebrate him. It was tearful and sad and beautiful and funny. Space enough was made for a little bit of everything. It was honest in a deep and a powerful way. He and I were never close. I was one level removed from his inner circle, but many people in my inner circle were also in his inner circle. It was good that some time had gone by, 2 weeks. I was far enough away, we were far enough away from the shock and the realization of loss that we gained some perspective, regained some traction. We were far enough away to have found another way of looking at things. We were able to turn the corner on it a little bit. We were able to reinvest in deepest integrity, deepest humility, deepest joy, and deepest sorrow, love, and friendship. And we recovered something true. I would like to think that we did. I know that we recovered something that we had lost in the first few waves of grief. I recovered a feeling of generosity and a feeling of abundance. I shrank at first. I clutched, I clenched, holding on to things far too tightly. I had forgotten how to surrender, not in defeat, but in release. My defenses and my pride had gotten in the way. So I remembered this line of poetry to help me out. It was a line of poetry that I hoped would help me out both with what was going on inside of my heart and with what I was seeing in the world around me. Remembering what Rebecca Parker said, that the fault lines of the problems of our world run through our very hearts. It was a powerful stanza. The poem is about the loss of a loving relationship, the loss of a partner, the unrequited love story. And the poet writes, I can't call you from this place to hear you say that you're not my kind. It's a thin road before us where the wake left behind, and it's sad. And I fail to see what it had to do with you and me, but I guess that's like wondering what's a point to a line. There must be something that I wanted more than wanting your love, because you stood in my doorway and I stood in my glove, most afraid to follow a kingdom my stride. It's so telling what won't live with hunger and pride. Can you hear the loss in these words and feeling? Can you connect with that feeling? She writes, I thought of you often, but I never could tell you. The you that I cherished, something hurt me so bad. A few had come close, but I couldn't let them in either. I guess the distance between us was my love never had. And though we live separate, I keep 2 rooms open, and the one has you in it, and the other does not. And I move in the middle, unsure and protected, and I trip on my rope, vaguely sensing that I'm caught. I think this is what I wanted to talk about this morning. This vague sense, this nebulous sense of being caught. Maybe we've had this experience, this feeling of being seen through, all flaws revealed, every imperfection shining. What a difficult experience and what an opportunity. When I'm exposed, and when I'm honest with myself, real growth can actually begin. In fact, it would be smart of me if I admitted to myself that the hardest part of this ministry and the hardest part of my life is finding a way to become this honest and this exposed, to be this much seen, to be this much exposed and this vulnerable. A woman named Farron wrote the words that I am sharing with you. She is the poet. She is the one who plumbed the depth of her own soul and came back with something wonderful. How honest did she have to be with herself to do this? How honest did she have to become to be able to see the beauty of imperfection, the beauty of disconnection, the wonder of difference, and even opposition? She writes, in the streets or the after, in churches or in memory, the light that will guide you is the source of the flame. And while stumbling in back alleys in search of right action, I fell and wept darkly and acknowledged your name. And the door to my prison dissolved right before me, but like a young fool, I quick looked for a power to claim. And my wailing increased with the shock of the knowledge that often I have needed something out there to blame. This is where I find myself tripping on my rope. This is where I find myself most caught. I can become stuck in my own righteousness sometimes, failing to slow down enough to see beyond the veil. Often I fail to see beyond that which can separate me from others. More often I fail to see that which can separate me from myself. And here is where I am most broken, especially when I'm dealing with trauma. I'm sure it's like this for all of us. We tighten, we become reactive, we become combative, we engage, we lash out when we perceive the enemy. We lash out at what might indeed be the enemy, while remaining blithely unaware that the lashing out itself is most certainly the enemy. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself. Jesus says, welcome the stranger. And I think it's ridiculous that fellow Americans of late have taken to calling the United States a Christian nation, while at the same time trying to pass laws and trying to adopt policies that negate the very things that Jesus said. And these are not the life-giving practices of what Jesus talked about. They are the money-grabbing habits of commercial advertisement. But do you know what? These money-grabbing habits are delivered to us by the very people that we are called to love universally. I know who that is. Not love in a personal way, but love in a spiritual way. I am delighted in blaming other people sometimes. It makes me feel better about myself, but it does not feed my soul. It doesn't remove the veil that separates, it strengthens the veil that separates. It does not help me hold things together. It encourages me to delight in tearing things apart, which is way easier, and it's not helpful in the slightest. Much is broken now, and we need to face that squarely, but we also need to find the strength enough in ourselves to find delight in life. Farron writes, I give up my fisted glove, my thoughts strung like fences, my totem pole stature body chipped to the bone. I'm nobody's savior and nobody's mine either. And I hear the desert wind whisper, but neither are we alone. And sure, I long to ask how you're doing and if you got to the lightness that we wanted so fiercely when we drifted that way. There are no telephones ringing now, but I hear something calling me, and I'm ready to go. I just need time to say that hearts are like meadows, with their weathered potentials, with their reasons diluted by reason itself. And I may be shivering at the foot of this slow-giving mountain, but its tiny spring flowers can look just like you. And I won't ask the purpose of all of my footsteps, and I won't let my eyelids cast down. I'm looking for something outside of forgiveness. You might call it the jewel of the crown. Now I'm utterly shattered by what's unfolding in Gaza, and I'm shattered by what's unfolding in Israel. And the costs of war and violence are not rational costs. This conflict, this war is not transactional. It's imbalanced, it's disproportionate, it is profane. That is inescapable, no matter what language of rationalization we try to apply to it. But blame and shame, righteousness and indignation, pride and political posturing will not ease our suffering. None of these will help us to end the racial nightmare, or to achieve our country, or to change the history of the world. My heart is so shattered when I try to pick sides. I don't want to choose an obvious moral victory anymore and learn to look my nose down at other people. I don't want to make a new veil for the 21st century. We don't need another veil. We need something far more beautiful than a veil. We need a deeper measure of understanding. Nearly 2 years ago, the world witnessed a terrible violence in Israel. A violence that reopened the scars of the Second World War, and Jewish people the world over were traumatized, and people of faith the world over are traumatized. How shall we begin in love again? How shall we begin the work of healing? Would you do something for me? Quick thing. Would you open your hymnals if you can to reading number 637? It's in the back of the hymnal. Number 637, it should be Litany of Atonement. It begins, we won't read through the litany, but it begins with, for remaining silent when a single voice would have made the difference. We forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love. For each time that we're struck out in anger, for each time that love has blinded us. I invite you to read this on your own. I don't want to rehearse it here. But it goes on from there. What I wanted to say was that this passage was written by Ellen Rocket and Rob Eller Isaacs. Rob and his wife Jan Eller Isaacs were my mentors in Minnesota and St. Paul when I lived there during seminary. I didn't realize until recently that this litany was originally written in the first person. So for each time that we have struck out in anger had originally be for each time that I have struck out in anger. And for each time that our greed has blinded us had originally been for each time that my greed has blinded me. We forgive ourselves and each other, and we begin again in love had originally been, I forgive myself and others, and I begin again in love. The original version was deemed too intimate for our hymnal. So we edited the teeth out of it. We do that sometimes. Some people think it's the right thing to do, other people feel otherwise. I myself am not choosing sides. I want to end with this story about something that happened at the Holocaust Museum years ago. As I have gone through it in Washington, D.C., it's a museum from which there's only one way out. So you go to the top floor and you have to walk your way down. There was an amphitheater. I've shared this story before, but there was an amphitheater when the museum finally let us out into a more light, more beautiful place. And there was an interview happening on the screen of a woman who had survived the Holocaust, and could show her tattooed the numbers that were printed on her arm. And the interviewer was young and said, "What does it feel like to survive a genocide?" super enthusiastic, as if it were an early junior year project, in college. And he said the word genocide so many times that the interviewee said, "What do you think genocide is?" And the interviewer said, "It's when one group of people kills another group of people who are different from them." And she said, "No. Genocide is when one group of people kills another group of people who are believed to be different. Let's not take part in that again." Closing word to these by Amy Césaire. It is not true that the work of humanity is finished, and that we have nothing more to do but be parasites in a world, and that all we need to do now is to keep step with the world around us. The work of humanity is just beginning, and it remains to conquer all the violence entrenched in the recesses of our passion. No race holds the monopoly of beauty, of intelligence, of strength, and there is a meeting place for all at the rendezvous of victory. Rumi was right. There is a place where we can all meet. This rendezvous of victory, this field beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing. Let's meet there this afternoon. Bring your own frisbee. Maybe so. Blessed be.